Hey, everybody, welcome back to View from the Top podcast, where we help growth-minded men who desire momentum in their business, their family, their finances, their spiritual life. We help them get through the valleys and up the mountain to their very own view from the top. So glad you listened in today. Hey, today we're going to dive into a topic today that many of you listening have either been involved with, groups, right, of some sort in the past. Like maybe you've been in a C12 or Vistage, or even in a local networking group, BNI, or you've been in some type of group. Maybe you've been in a specific group about learning more about something in your industry, right? And there are lots of different groups out there. Well, today we're going to talk about how do you choose one? How do you choose a group? What are other different kinds of groups? Are you aware of all the different kinds of groups that are out there? And we're specifically going to focus on today what Iron Sharpens Iron Brotherhood is all about, and the different components that are in there, and how those are some similar to some other groups, and how they're uniquely different, and how those, what we call the 5 pillars of transformation, can help you change your life and your legacy. So listen in with us today. Let's get Big A in here. Big A, you ready to go?
Wally, I'm always ready to go. I get pretty amped up listening to your introductions and thinking, man, I wished he'd hurry up and bring me in so I could have a chance to chat. Good to see you, man. How you been?
Yeah, man. I'm doing awesome. We had a great, I keep thinking about the Alex Sanfilippo interview last week. We talked about podcasting, but man, the beginning of that, we had asked, full disclosure, part of our co-hosting, when we allow people to come in and be on the show, is that we ask them some questions. And so we actually got to dive into his life a little bit, right? Outside of just podcasting. And man, that was so cool. So cool. And I'm excited for him and what he's doing. And glad that everybody's listening back today, this week, for this episode, as we dive into understanding better the different types of groups, and specifically how Iron Sharpens Iron Brotherhood and what we're doing there. Man, it's just making a big difference in guys' lives. I'm excited.
You know, what's funny is now we're almost 100 episodes in. I don't know that we've ever really broke it down like we're going to today. We've mentioned over the course of time about Iron Sharpens Iron. People have a fundamental understanding of it, but we're going to dive in a little bit deeper. And I was really thinking back almost 25 years ago now when I first got involved in being in a mastermind. And that's kind of what was the catalyst to this. It was like, I've got to revert back. I got to think when I wasn't familiar with masterminds and what was going on in my life and what took place. And Wally, when you think about being in a group or being in a mastermind, like what immediately came to your mind before you were involved in a group? What was your hopes of getting out of a group? Or, what was your thoughts around that?
Yeah, so ISI Mastermind wasn't the first group like that I was part of. I tried, I'm just going to list them all out here because I think they're relevant to how the guys listening today, like how we think. So was saved, came to Christ, accepted the gospel when I was 8 years old. So been in church, pretty much my whole life. Been involved in a number of Bible studies. And that's a group of people, right? It's just a group. So we're just going to call it a group. That's a group of guys. I've always been in guys' Bible studies pretty much. Some mixed with couples and some marriage stuff and whatnot, but mostly with guys. And they were good for what they were. But the study itself didn't leave me wanting more. The inability for people to understand me as a business owner, as a business leader, as an entrepreneur, left some holes in relationships that just couldn't be filled there. They couldn't. I didn't know that at the time. So I'm wanting this, desiring this, and if I just get together, it's going to be great. And it was good. It was good. And I still involved in Bible studies, small group today. But now I recognize that there's different areas of my life that I need to have relationships that help me in the way God's designed me. And so I was learning that through that time. I got involved in some local business network like Chamber of Commerce stuff, and that was good. It was helpful from a business perspective. It was good. I made some contacts. But man, still you'd show up, you'd sit down, you listen to somebody talk for a little while. Somebody does their spiel up front. Maybe you have a sidebar conversation with somebody over a, stale donut or something. And then it's like you leave. And it wasn't set up for business relationship to do business. Yes. That was what it was there for. But I left with a hole. There was just something still missing. I'm like, what is missing? I don't know. I had no idea. So I'm longing for this.
You didn't even know what you didn't know. Like you were missing something. You couldn't really even identify what that even was. You just felt empty.
There's a part that was like, I didn't feel empty like I was an empty vessel or anything, but there's parts
but you were
of it
unfulfilled.
You're just like, man, there's something. And so from there, I began searching, looking online and found one and kind of involved in that one. And it was pretty lame, honestly. And then I found one that was like, again, I don't want to mention their name on the air, because I don't think it does them justice. And maybe things have changed since time has gone by. Because this was 9, 10 years ago. And it wasn't good. It was like we met, I think, once a month or once every 2 weeks for like an hour and a half, I think. And it was mixed. It wasn't just men. It wasn't just women. It was men and women, which isn't nothing wrong with that.
Sure.
It was closer. I'm going to say that. So it was closer to what I felt I was missing and what I needed.
What were you missing? That was my question. What did you hope to get out?
Yeah. I didn't know yet still. I still didn't know.
Oh, you're still, okay.
No, I still didn't really know.
Still exploring.
Yeah. I'm trying, it's there, but it's like, oh man, I can't quite put my finger on it.
Yeah, it's elusive.
Yeah. So I was in that one for a year. And then I went to a conference and, I don't know if I've told the story about how I got introduced to you. I was at a conference, actually a Ray Edwards seminar that he was putting on. And I was there and we had a lunch break and I was looking for something. I went to lunch at Chick-fil-A. Of course, you wear the badges, and I'm at the counter. There's this guy standing in front of me that has a badge on. And just started kind of a conversation. Hey, you're at some webinar? Yep, that's good. Seminar? Yep, it's good. And talking with him and he's like, hey, you want to sit down and eat with me? I was like, yeah, that'd be great. So we start talking and he's like, I said, do you know anybody who does like men's groups? I did know, to answer your question from earlier a little bit, I did know that I wanted to be men only, but there was a reason. It wasn't because I'm against females or any of that. Nothing to do with that at all. It was just that I knew that as a man, I had unique challenges in my marriage. I had unique challenges in my business. I had unique challenges in my personal life. I had unique challenges in my finances. I had unique in these areas, these primary areas of my life, I had these challenges. And so I knew that I wanted to. So I'm asking this guy, long story short, it turns out to be David. I can't remember his last name. He took the picture of you guys, the Eagles, when you were in Dave Ramsey's, Dan Miller's and
David Molnar.
David Molnar. Yeah. So he's like, man, you got to he says Aaron Walker is here. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, you can't mess with him. He's a big, tall, bald guy. I'm like, oh, okay. He says, he just started this thing recently, the Mastermind. I think he's got this community thing. And sounds like it's what you're looking for. And I was like, cool. So I went back to the breakfast area at the hotel we were staying at and the tables, and you're actually sitting up against the wall doing some work on your computer. And I couldn't bring myself to go introduce myself. I was so scared. So I sat down 3 tables away.
I'm not that intimidating.
I sat down 3 tables away. And then after the seminar, I went home, looked you up, looked up what you were doing, joined the community. And we talked earlier about, kind of how I went into that. So here's where when I joined the Mastermind, it was maybe a month or 2 or 3 at the most where I knew exactly what I was missing then. And that was unbiased, unfiltered, trusted guys around me that I could say the things that were on my mind, not without question or challenge, but with no condemnation. they weren't condemning me for what I
didn't want to be judged and like you shouldn't be doing this and scold you and things. Like
that. There's a difference between someone asking you a question about like,
right,
is that a wise decision for you to be making that, doing that, or this behavior, whatever. And so when I got into that and like, it is hard today. Partly why we're doing this episode, that's hard to explain. Somebody said a little while ago, they're like, man, there's a lot of masterminds out there that do like, focus on business or marketing or a certain industry stack or, BNI and C12 and BNI, like all those kinds of things, Vistas, all that. There's all these things out there. It's like, now that I've experienced ISI Mastermind, it's like, you guys are kind of in your own category, which is both interesting and scary at the same time, because it can be hard to explain.
It is. It is hard to explain. When I think back, it's a long time. I got to go back decades now when I was introduced to the concept of masterminds. Yeah. I didn't want to join at all. Like I didn't want to do it. And when I start thinking about that, I think, I can't imagine getting around 10 other men and bearing my soul. Like I just couldn't bring myself.
You're a private. I mean, in general, you've been a private person your whole life too, right?
Yeah. My whole career. I've been. My dad raised me that way. Mm-hmm. It was like, hey, don't tell anybody anything personal. Don't ever tell them about your finances. Don't tell them about your family. It was that was instilled in me at a very early age. Mm-hmm. My dad was a really, really private man his entire life. And so I couldn't even imagine getting around guys and being vulnerable. Like I was even taught that's less than manly. Like you're not vulnerable and you're not transparent. Like man up, shake the dust off, like don't do it again, move on. That was the kind of thing. It wasn't that my dad was doing anything wrong. It was just the era by which he was raised, He was born, 1930. So, men looked at things a little differently then. Not saying it was bad or better now, but there was an era there. That generation was raised, really, really hard.
Yeah.
So my dad obviously kind of taught me that, and to have them to know every dark corner in my life, it scared me to death. I started thinking about, man, what would they think? Would they respect me anymore? Like, would they even like me? Like, if I were to share something, this was the thoughts that were going through my head when this guy here in Nashville invited me to join his group. I was like, golly, all these thoughts were just racing through my head. And I started thinking, well, what if they find out that I don't have every base covered, like every area of my life? And I thought, I've got debt, and one of the guys in the group was anti-debt. He didn't want to have any debt whatsoever. And I was like, he's going to find out that Robin and I have a mortgage and we have other rental property with mortgage, on it. What if they find out that I hadn't done a good job saving for the future? Like, I didn't contribute to my 401k every year or my SEP plan. And it's like some years I've struggled financially, and it was like, I didn't contribute. Am I going to be looked down upon? And there was blind spots in my life. Like I knew what blind spots were, but I had some of them. And one of them was like scaling my business. It was like, I don't really know the next right thing, but I'm going to fake it till I make it. That was my mindset. It was like, eventually I'll figure it out if I just keep doing the work. And then there was a period of time that I was talking to Robin about this before I actually went to this mastermind and joined. She said, why don't you just try it? Mm-hmm. And I did. And I was really quiet, Wally, for about 3 months. I mean, I just sat there and.
Which is hard to believe. I'm not going to lie.
I know you have to believe it though, because it's true. I've come out of my shell since then. But,
yeah. Okay.
But I was thinking about, how embarrassed I would be if they'd asked me a question that I didn't know the answer to. Mm-hmm. Or how embarrassed would I be if I had to tell them, hey, I've been a business owner, but I don't have the cash flow to cover all of my obligations. Like, well, how am I going to feel if they were to talk about those kind of things? Or there was a point in my business career I was over leveraged. Like, man, one bad mistake happened in the rental market and all the cards would come tumbling down. And I was like, do I really want to face that? Do I want to tell these guys that that was going on. But then I had to be honest with myself, and I had to really own the fact that being in business for yourself can be really lonely. Mm-hmm. And that's where I was at. I was in a spot, there was a convergence of a number of travesties going on in my life. I was dealing with a real personal situation with Robin. I just had an automobile accident where I ran over and killed a pedestrian. I had a business that was doing okay, but not as good as I'd hoped. And I felt that weight. And I thought, if there's any opportunity to be able to work through these things, now may be the best opportunity. And quite honestly, and I don't say this tongue in cheek, I really think it saved my marriage and it saved my business career. Because I was willing to go in and say, I've tried everything else and it's not worked out the way I'd hoped, and maybe this will work. And I just want to be honest that that's 2.5 decades ago. Now, it probably saved those two things, my marriage and it saved my career. So, yeah, Masterminds are really been a game changer for me. And I thought, it would be cool if we really talked about what a mastermind was to people that are unfamiliar with it, and who's it for? Like, is that for you? And then why does it even matter anyway? I called a guy the other day and was talking to him, and we were talking through some of these things. And I said, it's difficult to explain, because we deal with the whole person. You do get in some masterminds and they're niche specific or they're business specific. And it's like, okay, I can explain that. But when you get in and you're talking about developing the whole man, like, how can we describe that? And a couple of days later, the phone rang and I looked down and there was a guy, Stephen Jones, lives down in Jacksonville, Florida. A good friend of yours, a good friend of mine, been in ISI for a long time. And he said, hey, Big A, how's it going? I said, hey, it's going good. He said, I want to share a few things with you. And I said, yeah, sure. What is it? He said, I was asked a question by Matt Kinnaman, one of the facilitators in ISI recently, what ISI has done for him. He said it was a very pointed question. He said, what do you mean? He said, no, I mean specifically, how has ISI changed your life? And he said he had heard other guys make comments. He said, but I wanted to give some thought to it, and he did. And he summarized it this way, which I thought was genius. He said, ISI Mastermind shortens the learning curve of life. And I was like, what did you say? And he repeated it again. And I said, oh my gosh, like, that's exactly what it does. I said, I'm going to steal that. I'll give you credit the first time, but after that, I'll own it. And he started laughing. And I thought, man, that is going to be a topic that we're going to dive into today a little bit. And so, yeah, so that's what Masterminds I thought was going to be. And it proved to be something totally different. When I start thinking about some of the questions that I ask myself early on, I thought it hasn't really changed. That we still deal with the same things, whether we're dealing with a widget that we're selling or a service that we're providing. I started thinking about what are some of the questions that I ask myself that maybe our audience here at View from the Top is asking themselves. And I thought, am I stuck wondering how to effectively grow my business? And that was top of mind for me. It was something really important to me because I was stuck in a sense. And so for me, that was one of the questions. What about you, Wally? Is there a specific question that you were asking yourself when you were exploring getting involved in the mastermind?
Yeah. For me, the number one thing was like, I was a leader of my business. I'd had a business at that point. When I first started thinking about these types of groups and got in those earlier ones, it didn't work out. It was probably 2012, a couple of years, before I joined the ISI Mastermind in 2016. And I had my business since 2003, really since 2005 that I went all in. So it had been 7 years, and I'm like, man, like I'm at the top of the food chain here. As far as like, you can't, I can go home and go back. What's happening is I'd go to Bible studies and I'd try to bring some of these things up, and they just look at me like deer in the headlights. I have no idea what you're talking about. It doesn't make any sense. Or their answer was something really stupid. Like, wow, just write it off. I'm like, this is how it works. You heard that before. And then
how many times do we do that though? We go into an environment that they don't have context to where we're at.
You can't possibly give it all.
There's no way you can. Yeah, there's no way you can get good feedback when they don't have any context.
Yeah. And I'd come home and, with Sonia, and I want to be a leader in our home, and I don't want to. I want her to. She's a great counselor, but I didn't want to weigh her down with everything I was dealing with every day. I don't think that was wise. Mm-hmm. And my mom. A lot of us, earlier in our careers, we default. I love my mom. I default to her. Her answer in 2005 was, "Don't you dare go into business yourself because you won't have health insurance." I'm like, oh my gosh, Mom. She actually came and apologized years later. She goes, "I'm so glad you went into business for yourself." But you are at the top of the food chain, and you may have I was starting to build team leaders at that point in 2012 in my business, and it was becoming a substantial business. Millions in revenue and very healthy profit margins. And so there's a lot of responsibility there with, you grow a team of 40 people, and it's a big deal. And I couldn't go to them on some of the things I was dealing with.
Yeah. I mean, you can be transparent with them to a point.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's not a safe environment for you to go.
It's not the right space for some things.
Right.
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 Open book stuff. Great. I mean, I get that. Open finance, I get all that, but you just can't, you just can't. And so
they're biased. They can't help but be biased, and they're going to make decisions based on what's best for their family.
So I felt alone. I felt alone at the top of the food chain. And I didn't have other people, that I could consistently, share with, invest into, hear what they're saying about other people like in that group. I didn't have that, and I felt alone. And I knew there was, the Bible talks about, there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors, and I'm like, okay, well, where do I get this? Where is that wisdom? And
it goes on to say that there's safety.
That's right.
Right. In that counsel. One of the things that I had to finally do was do a deep dive personally and be honest with myself. People say, well, just be honest. It's difficult to be honest with yourself. And we know things that we're lying to ourselves about. It's going to get better. I just keep doing this. Well, I just want to tell you, it's not going to get better. If you just keep doing the same thing, you're not going to get different results. And so I had to really do a deep dive, and I really recognized that there were things I didn't know, and I had to own it. I don't know what I don't know. And until I get around some other people that have experienced it, has a different set of filters, they've got different life experience, they've had similar life experiences with business or with children. It's like, I got so tickled recently. One of the guys in ISI came to me and he said, "I'm going to go tell my wife she's going to do this and this." And I said, "How long have you been married?" He said, 4 years. And I said, "Well, I've been married 44 years. And you do that and your hind end's going to be on the couch tonight." And so my point is there's some things we don't know, right? Yeah. Experience has to teach us, or we get around people that's even more competent that can help us kind of work through those. So owning it, recognizing it, there's some things I just don't know.
Mm-hmm. I was asking myself too, like when I started having wins, I didn't have anybody to share them with. I'm not talking about just the financial wins. Like, funny story. I heard somebody, I think it was Dave Ramsey, talk about one time, like these milestones, right? That they did in their business, and they would do something or whatever. So for me, it was, I was gonna get a Mont Blanc pen when I hit $1 million in sales. And $1 million came and went. I never got a pen. So $2 million, I was like, okay, I'm going to get a Mont Blanc. If you guys know, like Mont Blanc pens are like bottom line, like 300 to $1,000 or more. Right. And, so at $2 million, I was like, all right, we were in New York City for an event, and I was like, I'm going to go to the Mont Blanc store and get a pen. So I did. And, I still have it here. It's sitting right here. But, anyway, who am I going to tell that to? that you spent $1,000 on a pen, right? So you have those, you have those moments. And then who's going to be brave enough to say, why the heck did you spend $1,000 on a pen? But beside that, when it comes to family things, like I remember there was a guy in my ISI Mastermind group. My daughter started getting married, and I was all excited. I'm like, yeah, I'm just getting married, and I was sharing that with him, and he listened, and some of his feedback was how much you guys spending on the wedding. I never had anybody ask me that at church. I love my church people. I was in my church for 22 years in Michigan at that time. Like no one would have ever asked me that. And when I told him how much, he's like, oh, that seems reasonable. I'm like, really? Like, it's like, yeah, that seems reasonable. Well, because I was expecting something totally different. And so he that's like celebrating with me that we get to do this. I mean, it wasn't a crazy amount of money or anything either. That wasn't even the point. The point is that having someone who can celebrate the things with you that because there's a common, they get it, they just get it differently than other people. And
what's cool is we have a whole celebration service at our live event, reading off the wins that people have, and people are cheering. And the guys that want to can get up and say, hey, we did $1 million last year in business. We did $1.5 million this year, or $3 million, or whatever it is, or 500,000, or whatever it is that's the increase. And you're able to share that in an environment where guys celebrate. You don't feel bad, like I shouldn't have shared that. No disrespect to anyone's family, but it's hard to do that with family.
Yeah.
It's hard to go into your family. You have, brothers and sisters, or your mom and dad, and say, hey, I just did this or that. It's like, well, they think you're bragging, or they're one up in their, sibling. And so we've really worked hard to foster that environment that you're able to share those wins. Another thing that really was piquing my interest about the time that I gave in and said I'm going to be involved in a mastermind was that I was starving to death for authentic relationships.
What
it wasn't a facade.
What do you mean by authentic?
Yeah, because you go see people, we've used church as a couple of examples. It sounds
I don't mean
like
to beat up church. I'm not. We keep doing that.
We're not. We love church. I love church. I've been in my church 30 years. We're leaders there.
Like that's for sure.
It is. But it's hard to go there without seeing somebody and saying, hey, how you doing? I'm doing good. When there's even a friend of ours right now that's in a really tough spot, and he's not going to go there and just share this tough spot because they're not doing life every single week. They're not asking questions. They don't have context. They don't know where he's at. And you've got to subject yourself to an environment that gives you permission to share these things on a weekly basis. And it's just not the framework that's set up outside of these small closed groups that I'm talking about. And so I was starving for going in and saying, right now things suck really bad, and me and Robin are not getting along very good, and my cash flow is terrible, and I've got a grandkid that's doing this, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And not be looked down upon, but given encouragement, them loaning me their courage when I don't have any.
I love that.
Right.
ISI all the way. Borrow courage. Yeah.
And so I wanted a place that I could do that. I wanted genuine relationships with people that it's okay to say, I'm not okay. And so for 10 years, we've been building that culture that guys can go in. There's no mask. There's no pretense. There's no facades. We are who we are, right? And we hopefully are the same way in front of each other as we are our families. We're authentic. And so that's one of the things that I was really starving for, that the Masterminds gave me, or has given me now weekly for 25 years.
Yeah.
That was something that I really wanted.
I've definitely found meaningful relationships and meaningful connections. I love that word meaningful, authentic, genuine. Like, bragging on, it seems weird in some ways, like bragging on ISI, but dang, like the difference.
Well, I think we've got something that's good to brag
I see
on.
these guys in my own life, right? Like I could sit here and I actually made a little list, and I'm not going to read it off, but like I was thinking about everything from relationally to, having those meaningful connections with other men. And some of the conversations we've had, like man alive, like it's not like you're talking about that to everybody all the time. It gives you a place that when it's appropriate to be able to have deep conversations about intimacy things potentially with your wife, and like financial struggles, and like you mentioned, things with your kids, and there, as a business owner, a business leader, or an entrepreneur, there is a unique aspect that you bring to your family. There just is. It is unique. It's different than I've done the 9-to-5 thing, and the 9-to-5 thing is great. Like it's great. It has its own unique challenges. So does being a business owner. And so ISI is for Christian business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs, men. Mm-hmm. And I'm bragging on that, man. Cause like, I think one of the final things for me, of like that I was asking myself, those kind of questions that you ask yourself, or maybe I discovered it later. I didn't really know what it was at the time, but it sounds like a prideful thing to say. And it's not how I mean it. I think you'll hear it in good, my motive is right. I love being able to give back to guys. Like God has allowed me to learn so much from my own mistakes, from my own successes, right? Raising 3 daughters that are all married now and out, right? Building a business 100% remotely, doing it well, having a 93% employee retention rate over that 18 years I owned the business.
That comes with a lot of hard work, and
selling.
We need to do an episode on that.
Like,
right?
It's not, and I'm not saying that like I have all the answers. I just know what God taught me when I learned through that, and I'm able to share that with other people, other guys in the same that are going through very similar things. And what I learned, we have this thing called Man in the Middle in our ISI Mastermind groups, right? I mean, you obviously in there, so but it's like every week there's 1 or 2 guys, depending on the schedule, that gets to show up, and like they get their half an hour, 45 minutes of like airtime. So, if being in a group, I'm getting that usually every 6 to 8 weeks myself. Other groups that I've been part of before, and I've heard from other people, the groups that they're in, you might get that once a year, and you get it once every 2 to 3 months, 2 months. And so there's been times when I go to calls and I'll sit there and I might not say hardly anything the whole time, because what he's going through, I don't have quite that experience or something to say into that other than be encouraging for him or to pray for him. But there's somebody else in the group that's really leaning in hard. You know what I'm doing? I'm not on my computer typing something up, shut my screen off and hide. And no, I'm learning by proxy. Right?
Here's the thing. You don't have to go through that. You're learning on his dime.
That's right. That's right. It's so invaluable. And
here's the thing is so much life happens so fast now. Once a year is not going to get it. Like I got so much stuff happening week to week. Like I can't wait for that time. It's like, oh my gosh, what's cool is they all have the group's text threads, whether it's Voxer or
that's
what
so
other
cool. We have an ISI
platform.
app and some use texting. Yeah.
And so they're able to communicate daily. Many of these guys are literally talking daily through text messaging, asking questions, getting feedback, getting other resources, networking, getting introductions. Like it's the very fabric by which we operate daily. And so it's not just that 1 hour. It's like it's there for your utilization ongoing all the time. Guys are pouring into you. What's cool too is that periodically we do the monthly focus topics, where we bring in phenomenal guests. A lot of them are from within ISI. Mm-hmm. We have some incredible teachers and educators and speakers and authors and coaches that will come and they'll do a breakout session. They'll have a focus topic that they'll talk about. And we created some really cool tools also. One of them is a scorecard. It's called the Success and Significance Scorecard, where a couple of times a year, some guys do it more often, some guys do it once a quarter. you can look at everything that you're doing in one fell, peak. You
All
can
five of
see
those
personally.
transformation
All
pillars
five,
that we have.
yeah, are there. And so you can see at a glance. A lot of people say, well, what if guys are not honest? Well, what are you doing in here to begin with? Like, if you're not telling the truth, you're not going to get better. And so you've got to be like, hey, I wish that this were a 5, but right now it's a 4 or it's a 3 or whatever it is. And I want to aspire to do better. And we can look at it. That's the reason that we do this, is because we can give you good feedback when we have the context and we have the data to support it. There was a guy years ago, probably 8 or 9 years ago now, before we started doing the Come As You Will Be program and started doing the scorecard, to where, quite honestly, we didn't ask specific questions related to some of his finances. And we were giving him horrible advice for about a year. I had to go to him and apologize. After we did the scorecard, I was like, you're a train wreck. And you're not going to be in a good position here pretty soon if we don't get to the bottom of it. Now the guy's flourishing. For a number of years, he's done this process, and now he's flourishing. So we've created the tools within the organization to give us good data so we can give you good information. So it's pretty cool that we've got the tools. Hey, talk about the live events a little bit, Wally.
I mean, it's actually a couple episodes ago, we did a whole episode coming out of the live event. Where, we bring, so the ISI Mastermind is, we've got, in my group, I'm in the gunslingers group. There's groups called 100%, co-pilots, True North, like they all have fun names. There's one, I don't know why they call themselves what they do, but everybody else has really cool names. and they kind of get around that idea a little bit about, with one called the Forge. I mean, there's some cool stuff. The Sages. And so, but I'm in gunslingers. And we meet, weekly via Zoom, and then twice a year, spring and the fall, we have meetups where we get together. Not just sometimes it's just like this fall. Actually, it's going to be just our smaller groups. Maybe we'll meet up with another group at a city, around the country, and we decide on that as a group where we're going to go. But this last spring was, and every spring is always the full one where everybody comes. So all the groups, all 15 groups and their guys, like they all come. And not that all of them show up, obviously, because of family commitments and things like that sometimes. But the vast majority of the guys, I think we had I don't know what the percentage was this time. It was pretty large. I mean, very significant percentage that showed up, that came to the live event this in the spring.
It was broaching 90%.
Yeah, it was awesome. And man, the relationships are really cemented there. It's cool. Like, the first, I've been in 8 years, it'll be 8 years in October. And the first few years that I went, I felt like it was a fire hose every time. And now that I've been going quite a while, man, it's like I get to reconnect with some relationships and even some business partners that I've made over the years and invested some money, and get to connect with those guys there in person and without having to travel, to who knows where to see them.
The opportunities it presents is phenomenal also, because there's like deal flow. It's like, hey, you get an opportunity to hear what they're working on. People are going in partners together. Yeah. They're doing business together. They're buying real estate together. There's so many opportunities. You and I both personally have gotten involved with some ISI guys that we wouldn't have had that opportunity had we not been in this group. One of the things that I fail to mention often related to the live event is that currently we pay for the live event. It's part of your dues.
Yeah. This is rare. So it's so unique. That doesn't happen anywhere else that I'm aware of. I don't
know of anybody else that does that, but all you got to do is get there, and then we pick up the hotel. We pay for all the food. We pay for the event. We pay for the speakers. We pay for the breakout sessions. We pay for everything. All you got to do is get there. And I told that to a guy today that's joining, and he was joining, and he didn't even know that.
You got to stop telling
people.
And
he goes, he's like, yeah, I know. But he was like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And I said, no. I said, what's pretty cool is hundreds and hundreds of guys later, the vast majority say the live events alone are worth what the dues are annually. And there's so much more than that.
Hey, quick question. Quick question for you.
Yeah. Sure.
We're talking about all the good things. When there's tons of good things, what are some of the challenges? like whether it's in ISI Mastermind or other groups? Like, what are some of the things that guys like, well, you're saying all this rosy stuff, right? It can't be that good.
Mm.
Like, what are some of those challenges that we have inside ISI or other groups have?
Yeah. One of the things for me that I haven't really figured out yet, and we're working on it as a team, it centers around accountability. And a lot of people misuse that terminology. It's really, nobody can make you do anything, right? You've got to show yourself accountable, right? That's what we're doing. Some guys will say, hey, I don't need any accountability. And I've stopped debating that. And used to, I was really angry, if you will, not like terrible, but I was like, why don't you fill out this digital tool every week? It heightens your awareness to where you're at, keeps it at the forefront of your mind.
Gives context to the other guys that are in your group. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, for me, the most important thing is like I'm heightening my own awareness by writing it down, like I need to do better at this. The other thing is that on the call, you don't have time to go over every single thing with every single guy. And it's like, it gives you an overview.
Yeah, that'd be terrible.
Yeah. And it's like, there was a guy recently filled his out, and I wouldn't have known this, but he and his wife weren't in a real good spot. And he put it on the accountability tool. He said, my wife and I have not been in a good spot recently, and I just thought I needed to mention it. And I was able to call him afterwards and actually found out they were worse than he was portraying on that document. And I was able to kind of work through that with him. They got help. They got some counseling. They got back on track. But I wouldn't have known it had he not filled it out that particular week, right? And so that's a challenge, though, because a lot of the guys, they don't want to take the time to fill it out. And I keep saying the guys that do it are having more success because they're showing up accountable. Other guys are able to ask. And so, yeah, I would say that's one of the challenges. I wish that there was a higher percentage of guys. And I'll be honest with you, and you've seen this to be true, since I've stopped preaching about it, it seems like that the level of participation is increasing and guys are having more success. And I guess maybe it's a lesson to me. It's like lead through example and demonstrate. You do it and I do it every week and it works. And so, yeah, it's working good. So what about you? What's a challenge for you?
Yeah, I think that, when you think about in the mastermind, so in the ISI Brotherhood, we have the ISI community. Let me back up for a second. We've had the ISI Mastermind for a long time. And then a couple of years ago, we added the ISI Summit, which is actually just so the summit is a once a year weekend deep dive, 8 guys only for the weekend. There's some criteria to get there, certain business things, because what we've found is that some guys in ISI were raising their hand saying, hey, like the weekly stuff is great and I'm going to continue doing that. But there's a specific problem that I'm looking to solve. And can we get more of these guys from the ISI, all the groups that can come and so we did that. And that's been awesome the last couple of years. Huge leaps at that event. That's a more costly event, right, for that weekend. But then the Mastermind's kind of in the middle. That's a weekly commitment. And then you get the live events with that. And then just recently, actually last week, it's been a little while longer now. That's still because we're recording a couple weeks at a time. But we recently relaunched the ISI community. And that is I'm excited about that. But it's
taken off too. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's a lower price point. So it's $150, $149 or less. And depending on what offer you get at a time. So be watching for that if you're listening to this. We still focus around those 5 transformational pillars, but some guys we were talking to were like, man, I just can't commit to once a week. We're like, man, well, we could create a similar environment. It's not like the Mastermind exactly, but it's close in the sense that it delivers the value similar to a Mastermind, but does it in a monthly format. And so it's 90 minutes once a month. And we've already guys are like, dude, I can totally do that. Like that makes sense. The price point's right. So we're excited about that. We're excited about that.
That's cool.
Yeah. That coming out. And, so that's what we do inside, but not every week in the Mastermind. The question was not every week in the Mastermind that I'm in my call is every week, like a home run. right? There'll be maybe a week here or there, or once a month, or maybe 2 weeks in a row sometimes, where you're just like, like that was an okay call, but the guy didn't really come prepared that time. And, or maybe his topic wasn't, just didn't resonate with it. And there wasn't, it's just something, and then they'll be like the next week. And it's just like, game changer, game on, whether that's in, your finances, your business, your family, your relationship with your wife, your ability to minister and serve in your local church, right? Like, it's just so good. So
I'm glad we shared that with people too, Wally, because we don't want to paint a picture that your life is going to do a 180 in 30 days and every call is amazing. Like, this is reality of dealing with real people. Mm-hmm. But when you do the reps long term, the benefits that you get are phenomenal. It's a game changer in every aspect of your life, personally, professionally, spiritually. But it doesn't happen overnight. We don't want to mislead anybody to think, oh yeah, in 30 days, I'm going to be a new guy launching a new business. That's not realistic. That's not authentic. That's not genuine. It takes time to build these relationships, and it takes time for guys to get to know you, and it takes time for you to build the courage to be as vulnerable and transparent as I'm talking about. You don't go in day one doing those things. We give trust and we earn your trust, and then you give it back. And so it takes a period of time to do that. Like, if you were to quantify for the audience today who ISI is for, how would you position that?
We kind of say this even in the opening of the podcast, but we've been even narrowing it down even more lately, so that serving who we feel God's called us to serve. And that's the important distinction. People say, well, why do you only do this? Or why do you do that? Or why do you use that word? Or why because this is what God's called us to do. Like, I'm not going to argue. Right. We've tried arguing with that and it doesn't work out well. And so really leading into growth-minded men, growth-minded Christian businessmen, whether they're business owners, leaders in a business, or entrepreneurs. Like that's pretty much like that's who at the core level, that's who we're for and who we feel we've been able to be able to help. And those are the guys that we've seen the greatest life-changing over time as well.
You think about it, it's people that are trying to really catch up and level up. They're trying to scale their business. They're aspirational. They're like, they don't want to be status quo. They don't want to be average. My mom used to say, you're just as close to the bottom as you are the top when you're average. And these guys don't want to be average.
That's a good word.
They want to level up with their wife. They want to level up with their kids. They want to grow their business. They want to be a good steward over the resources that God's entrusted them with. They don't want to do it average. And so these are guys that really want to go forward. They really want to level up. Why does it even matter anyway? You're like, Big A, I get it. I know who it's for. I understand ISI, and I understand who it is that you serve. But why does it even matter anyway? I just want to tell you, you can go much, much further together than you can go alone. And I've proven that to be true over the course of my career. The first 20 years, I did it wrong. I tried to do it alone. And I just want to tell you straight up that you can go way further when you're authentic, you're transparent, you're vulnerable to other guys. You have people around you that you can subject yourself to their scrutiny at a very, very deep level. And so I just want to tell you why it matters is because it's going to change the trajectory of your life. It also matters because now you're purpose-driven. It's not that you're acting reactively, you're acting proactively. You're like, what do we want? Where do we want to go? Why do we want to go there? What are we going to do when we get there? There's a purpose behind your activity. It's not just simply reacting. The other thing is that you get to do life with aligned type people, businessmen, other husbands, fathers. I can't even begin to tell you the success that the men have had as a result of being around other people that they did learn through their mistake. And they were able to go home and say, I'm not going to repeat that. I'm going to do it differently. And the results are going to be way better. And so it's being able to constantly get information from other people that have different life experiences. Listen, the perspective from other people could be one of the most valuable assets in the mastermind completely, because you can only see it one way. You've only had one life experience. You've only done this one way. And even if you wanted to think it differently, you couldn't until someone else introduces you to that perspective. Now you've got this banded together, trusted advisors that are striving towards success and significance at a whole nother level. And so for me, those are some of the reasons that it really matters anyway. Robin says I'm a much better husband, dad, and granddad when I'm around these trusted advisors. So those are, for me, Wally, just a few. Anything come to mind as we end up today? Anything else, the reason it matters?
I've heard you say this before. I don't know if you just, I don't think I heard you just say this, but it resonated with me since I heard you say it years ago. And the older I get, the more true it becomes, is that we get one shot.
Yeah.
We get one shot at this. And I know in earlier seasons of my life, when I wasn't involved and connected, engaged with guys that I trust on an ongoing basis, that I made some terrible mistakes. And I still get to choose today. These guys are not my governor.
Right.
They're not, but they're my sounding board. And I know that I got to hold myself accountable. These, I've been married going on 31 years this year. I know I'm a little behind you, but I want it to be 44, and I want to do it with excellence. I've got 3 daughters and 3 awesome son-in-laws now that I texted them this morning. I just want to read this. The only reason I texted this was because of ISI. I never would have done this. There's no way I ever would have done this without ISI. So I texted them. I said, morning sons, I'm abiding with God this morning, thinking of each of you, praising God for his goodness, his forgiveness, his grace and mercy. Lots going in each of your lives right now. Big transitions, challenges, and blessings. Remember whose you are today. You're a child of the one true King. You have the rights and privileges of being a son in the kingdom. Who are you showing up as today? A loved, forgiven heir of the kingdom of heaven, or a downtrodden, stuck in the ditch, woe is me, vessel of fear? Choose well this day. Love you, man.
Wally, you're so right, man. It's not a trial run. We got one shot, and we got to do it right. Listen, guys, if you're looking to level up in the 5 pillars of your life, I want to tell you straight up, we can help you. We're only looking for men that want to do the work to live a more fulfilling and purposeful and meaningful life. If that's you, please reach out. We want to help you enjoy your view from the top.
Easiest way to reach us here at View from the Top, if you're interested at all in Iron Sharpens Iron community, Mastermind, or Summit, you can email us at pod@viewfromthetop.com. You can go to our website. There's multiple forms there in all the different areas that we just talked about. Man, we would love to hear from you guys. Please reach out, see how we can help, see how we can be a fit in your life, and you might be a fit for ISI. And we will see you next week.